Hello again and welcome to ISAC Software Academy Linux course. This is the fourth Linux lesson and we will be covering how to install Linux in this lesson and what to consider before, during and after Linux installation. The first thing to consider is how you plan to install Linux. There are many different ways of doing so, the most common of which is a live CD. However, you can also use a minimal CD, a network installation, a USB stick, or even a Windows installer, as well as a few other lesser known options. Some distributions offer floppy disk installs. We will not be covering anything like that today. We will only be covering the live CD installation method. This is to keep the lesson as brief as possible while still giving you a good coverage of Linux installation. Next to consider is where you plan to install the Linux distribution. Most people these days will use a dual boot configuration or possibly a single boot configuration. There are other options such as installing to a USB or external hard drive. However, in this lesson we will be covering how to install using the entire hard drive for a Linux installation. One thing to keep in mind when doing an install on Linux is that if you do choose to install using the entire hard drive, it will remove any other partitions, and as such, if you have something on that drive already, it will be deleted and then overwritten with a Linux partition and a swap partition. You should also consider what else is on that system. For example, if it is a home system, it will more than likely have some version of Microsoft Windows installed, and as such you may wish to actually keep that system. If this is the case, you could use a live CD to avoid installation, or you could repartition the hard drive, which does carry a risk of losing your data. The other option is to install a brand new hard drive and install from that. Whether that hard drive that you can install to is an internal one, external one, or USB flash drive makes little difference to the Linux installation. During the installation, you will also need to set up partitions for your Linux installation. Before doing so, it is a good idea to thoroughly consider what you want to use the system for. When considering this, should you want to use it for particular purposes like multiple disk access, then you would want a file system that is particularly good at multiple disk access rather than one that is better on a single disk. Once you have decided what file system you wish to use, you will then have to decide how you want to partition the drive. Linux has no problem with multiple partitions and will mount them just as easily as a single partition with some minor configuration changes. During today's installation, I will be utilizing the live CD as I mentioned before. We will be using an empty hard drive. it will be an Ubuntu distribution. We'll be utilizing the ext4 or extended file system 4, and we will have a single swap and root partition. We will not have any extras. For the purposes of this recording, I will also be utilizing a virtual machine for the installation so that it can be recorded from start to finish. When installing using a virtual machine, there are some minor differences from installing to a physical machine. However, they are mostly trivial, such as not having a DVD or CD drive to put a physical disk into. On a virtual machine, you simply use the interface provided to virtually mount an image, or you can, if necessary, mount the physical drive through the virtual machine. I will not cover this a great deal, as it's not the main purpose of this lesson. However, it is relatively simple and should provide no troubles if you wish to actually use a virtual machine to install with. It is, however, not required. As you can see, I've already set this one up, and these are the settings I have chosen to use for this installation. If you are utilizing a virtual machine to do your installation, then you can copy these or possibly use your own custom settings. However, some settings will interfere with a Linux installation. These settings are generally noted when you go to change them. On initial boot up, as you can see, the virtual machine will load up the installation when the CD is mounted, as the hard drive is empty and it is the only thing to actually load. You might occasionally, as you may have seen there, get error messages. They're not always a problem, so you can in fact ignore many of them. As you can see, as this is a live CD, you have the option of trying Ubuntu or installing Ubuntu. In this instance, we wish to install it, so I will be choosing install Ubuntu. However, if you wish, you can try Ubuntu before installing it, which is why this option exists. So just go ahead and click on install Ubuntu, and the next page will pop up. As you can see, it suggests that you have at least 4.4 gigabytes available on your hard drive and that you are connected to the internet. You also have the option of downloading updates while installing, or installing third-party software for MP3s. Today I will not be utilizing either of those options. However, you can, if you so choose, do that on your own system. So simply click continue, and next it will ask how you want to install it on the disk. At this point, as I stated, we will be utilizing the whole disk, so we will choose this option and simply click continue. However, if you want to do different partitions and are comfortable in doing so, you can in fact click something else, where, as you can see here, it will allow you to do your own partitions and multiple partitions if you wish. On this screen, it shows you what it's going to use on the disk. If you had something else on this hard disk, it would show you that partition, and as a result you would be able to see Ubuntu listed as it is here, along with whatever the other operating system was, for example a Microsoft Windows partition or perhaps another Linux installation. There's nothing to actually do here, so we're going to click install now. At this point it will start to install, and eventually, once it has finished installing, we'll come back to it and we'll show you where to go from there. As you can see, during the installation it asks you for some basic configuration options. In this instance it's asking where are you, meaning what is your time zone. It's detected mine correctly, so I will click continue. However, you can click on the map to change it to your time zone if you need to. Next, it will give you the option to change your keyboard layout. You may need to do this, so you will need to choose what your keyboard layout is. However, if it is a standard keyboard, such as the 104 key QWERTY keyboard, then you can simply click continue like I am. It then asks for setup information such as your name, the computer name, a username and password, and how you want to log in. In this instance, I'm going to be entering in a business name, which would be a lot easier in a real situation rather than a virtual box, since my keyboard shortcuts do not work. This is an issue that you will find you have on a lot of virtual machines. When you go to use a key combination that's used purely for navigation purposes, you may in fact get a menu rather than navigation. I'm going to use a very insecure password, and that's going to be my setup here. Obviously, when you are doing it yourself, you should change your name to your name, or if it is for a business, to the business that you choose to use the name. The username can be anything, though it is best to make sure that you can remember it, as it is case sensitive. Same with the password. You can also encrypt the home folder to make sure that nobody can access your information. I will not be doing that today, however it is an option if you need the extra security. So you can go ahead and click continue, and it will go through the rest of the installation and the marketing material that you can read. Something to note is that down the bottom in this area here, it will give you a status. That time remaining is not the overall time, however it does give you an indication of how long each installation step is taking, and as such can be helpful in estimating how much further it has to go. Now at the end of the installation it will ask you to restart now. Once you do so, it will reboot the machine, in my case the virtual machine, and when it comes back up you will have a usable machine. Now at present you'll see here it says please remove installation media and close the tray if any, then press enter. This is to avoid booting back up into the live CD, which I may be doing now as an example, presuming it hasn't automatically removed it. Okay, it has automatically removed it, so it is not something that you need to worry about on this particular virtual machine. However, if you are using a physical machine, the CD or DVD that you're using should be replaced before hitting enter. Removed before hitting enter. So once we're there, we can log in, and as you can see, it will begin to load up. At the moment it's still setting everything up for the first run, although it will not say that to you. As you can see, the desktop loads up. This is the Unity desktop that was mentioned previously. In this desktop you can see it has the taskbar up the top rather than down the bottom, as you would be used to with a Microsoft Windows installation. It has the user name, not the username, which sounds wrong, granted. However, the actual name of the person rather than the username used to log in is listed up here. There is also several items along the side here that you can use straight away. These are pre-installed and as such are available to use. Obviously Firefox is the web browser. Presuming that everything was detected correctly and automatically set up, you should be able to simply browse the web using that straight away. One of the things that you should do after an installation is here. It has installed drivers, as evidenced by the small card icon at the top, and you simply click on it and then install drivers, at which point it will present you with this dialog. This dialog obviously indicates that I have the virtual drivers to install. I can activate these drivers here, which requires my password to give permissions so that they can be installed, which will allow it to download and install that driver. On your system you will most likely have different drivers listed. That is about it for installing Linux. We will cover other things such as driver installation in more depth at a later date.